responding to some of the worst news to come out of Afghanistan. But first, Deputy Managing Editor Joshua Manning has an important update to a story we've all been hearing a lot about lately, Josh.
Thank you, George. So there have been a myriad of tragic stories that have come out of Afghanistan in the last week. One that you may particularly remember is a case where Biden, in a rash effort to look like he was in charge of the situation, decided he would conduct an airstrike on what he and his intelligence officials thought was a group of terrorists, when in fact what he did was he accidentally bombed a family. And best we can tell, it was a family of about 10. Now, in case you've missed that, just a super quick recap here. It was meant to target individuals with Afghanistan's branch of the Islamic State. They thought they were targeting a suicide bomber with an imminent threat to the airport. However, after the smoke cleared, neighbors came out, they tried to put out the fire, and what they said they found was just bodies of locals, bodies of a family that lived nearby. Now, the update on the story, Afghan journalist Ali Latifi, I think I'm saying that right, with Al Jazeera, he has now reported that when he visited the home where the bombing took place, 10 family members, including 6 children, were killed by the drone strike. And here's the real gut punch. Tragically, they had been issued special visas and were about to leave the country. So not only did
Which
Biden...
implies that these were allies of the U.S. in one way or another.
Allies had helped us, potentially translators, potentially intel sources.
Something like that, yeah.
Right. And state or the DOD had designated them as potential targets, as actually targets, I suppose, for evacuation. Which means not only, I mean, look, anytime you get an airstrike wrong, that's terrible, but this is about as wrong as you could get it. Not only were these innocent bystanders, these were actually people who were supporting the war effort and trying to save American lives. That's the kind of the darkest irony in all of this, is that these people worked actually to save American lives,
yeah.
And then the leader of American forces blew them up.
Right.
And we've asked ourselves this question so many times through all of this: would those people still be alive if Biden had followed Trump's plan to get out, if Biden had any perspicacity whatsoever, if Biden had looked just a couple days into the future? And I think the answer is yes. But for an inexplicable reason, he decided he had to move immediately. And this is what you get. This is what America looks like now. Remember when we were hated when Trump was in office?
Right.
Oh, we're a laughingstock on the world stage. Well, now we are absolutely despised because we kill innocents. And Cal Thomas had a piece today talking about how it's going to be very difficult for us to ever put a coalition together again when...
Why would anybody want to work with us?
When we walk away and leave them scrambling to get their own people. So this is exactly what you would expect from this kind of a haphazard military operation, but it's a consequence you wouldn't necessarily think about, that families are getting nuked from above, death from above, thanks to Biden's incompetence.
Well, it makes me wonder where this intelligence came from. So if these folks were opposition to the Taliban in some way, worked for the government, worked with the U.S. military presence, whatever, and the Taliban knew that, and then told the U.S. government, hey, we think these ISIS-K folks that you are after are in this house over here, did we just conduct a strike at the behest of the Taliban? I can't rule that out. I wish I could, but I can't rule that out. It would be just one more way in which the Taliban government has played the Biden administration.
Well, they are our allies. We decided to just look up the term in the dictionary earlier this week. We were like, is it possible allies doesn't actually mean what we think it means? And they are dictionary definition allies to Joe Biden at this point.
Yeah.
Where in the world? I mean, we knew it was going to be bad when Biden took office. Not even I would have predicted, though, that Biden would become an ally to the Taliban. People who systematically rape, pillage, and plunder.
They are. You said it earlier today, Josh. They are 7th century barbarians.
Yeah.
That's who they are, and our allies. That's who we've decided to stick.
That's
with
who
in
we're
the
running,
region.
and it's also who we're running from.
Yeah.
It's who we're running from.
Our allies.
Our
Running away
allies,
from
our
our
7th
allies.
century barbarian allies. We're running from.
Yeah.
This is so backward. Now, remember, this is from part of the administration that brought us the concept of leading from behind.
Sure.
So maybe this is victory by defeat. Maybe this is put out by the Ministry of Truth. I don't know.
That sounds about right.
But this is par for the course for the Biden administration. And, we had General Flynn calling for Biden's resignation, calling for the essentially the Joint Chiefs to resign. Are we going to get any resignations out of this? Or is that just pie in the sky?
My bet would be no. And the reason is I don't know that we will ever know who's truly responsible for it. Assuming that Biden is not calling all of these shots, and I think that's a fairly safe bet at this point. What's happened is you have people in positions of responsibility in the Biden administration who aren't accountable. They are able to do whatever they think is best policy-wise, enact that policy, and then point at the old man in front of the camera when things go wrong.
Yeah.
It's like spending other people's money. It's like, being in a position of financial responsibility and embezzling. That's essentially what it's like. There's just no accountability. And so I don't look. Every time Biden speaks, he just doubles down on this was the right decision to make.
Yeah.
Look, it might have been the right. I'm not even going to argue that. It might have been the right decision to make. I can argue we should have gotten out of Afghanistan. I can argue we should have gotten out of there 10 years ago.
Sure.
I can argue we never should have gone in the first place.
Or we should still be there.
Or that we should still be there. I can make all those arguments. Nobody's mad, really, about that. There are very few people saying we should never have gotten out of Afghanistan. There are some people saying that, but that's a relatively small voice. What we're telling you, Mr. President, is you screwed this up royally. You did this so poorly. That's why your poll numbers are plummeting. It's not because you pulled out of Afghanistan. Most Americans support that. It's because of how you did it. And the fact, either you're lying about, because you don't realize, you're pretending you don't realize that's true, and so you're lying about it, or you don't realize that's true. And I can't decide which one of those scares me more.
Yeah, I think I don't know, it's tough for me. I don't think there are going to be any real resignations or any impeachment, anything like that. I mean, Republicans have been calling for that for days now. It's not going to happen, in my opinion. It's just, like, you talk about Biden's poll numbers, you talk about, his approval is going down. People are clearly upset with him. But I have this feeling that it's not going to have any real-world consequences. I mean, we saw Biden come out, do his press conference about how the war is officially over, we officially gotten out, and he called it a rousing success. And
90% out, fellas. We got 9 out of 10 of them.
Cheered about the fact that only 10% of Americans are left in Afghanistan.
Wow.
I mean, as ridiculous as that is, I get the feeling that it's going to be Biden did this press conference, now we're moving on, we go to COVID, we go to whatever new talking point benefits him more, and the Biden administration really never addresses this issue again. Or if they do, it's very, very rare, much more sporadic than it has been. And that kind of what it feels like is going to be to me, unfortunately.
And that's a good point. The poll numbers actually may be the only thing that moves this. If we get in a situation where the American people are so fed up and they won't let go, and that's you guys, Biden just wants you to forget this. He wants to talk about something else.
Well, he said that.
Yeah, he wants to move on to the next thing. If we don't move on to the next thing, if we just continue to hold Biden's feet to the fire, never mind anybody else, then what you could have are enough defections on the Democratic side that they feel that they actually have to take some action, at least maybe hold an impeachment vote, even if they don't impeach him. I think that is unlikely, but because you gotta get Pelosi to even allow the House to discuss it, and I don't know that you're even going to be able to do that. No, I think her whole caucus could say we need to impeach this guy, and Pelosi's going to do what she wants to do anyway because that's who she is.
You think this is impeachable? I don't think it is.
No, probably not. It's not. It's not a crime. I mean, there. You could argue maybe that some of the communication with the Taliban government maybe violated national security.
Yeah.
Maybe
so they
there's
set that precedent.
Yeah, maybe there's something
2
in
years
there.
ago.
It
but
depends on what impeachment threshold that you're referring to. Are you referring to like a real impeachment threshold, or like the one that we have been given in the last 4 years?
Yeah.
Because now, compared to things that have been considered
Yeah.
impeachable by Democrats in the past, this is certainly impeachable. By an objective standard, I don't know. It's a more of a
constitutionally, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Maybe it depends on what comes out. Some pretty damning stuff has come out recently about his communication
Phone
with
calls.
with the Afghani government, both the former government and the current government of Afghanistan. So if more of that starts to leak out, I mean, Trump was essentially impeached over a phone call.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. Here's what's not going to happen. We're not going to apparently see the House honoring the fallen Americans in Afghanistan. During a pro forma session, a group of Republican representatives gathered on the House floor to introduce a bill to demand accountability from the Biden administration over its handling of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which, as we have just discussed, has been bungled so badly that bungled doesn't even fit anymore. It's more like mangled. I'm not sure what it's been terrible. So some Republicans got together, but the House leadership refused to recognize their presence on the floor, refused to give them the floor to list out the names of the 13 fallen members of the U.S. military from the ISIS-K suicide bomb attack a little bit ago at the Kabul airport. According to Brian Mast, who's a Florida representative and himself a veteran of the Afghan war, he said, quote, "We gavelled in, we had a prayer, said the Pledge of Allegiance, took a moment of silence with pretty much all Republican veterans, then asked to be recognized to read names and bring up Afghanistan legislation. They did not acknowledge us and just closed the House down." So they were gavelled out of session by Democratic Representative Debbie Dingell of Michigan, a fairly mainstream leftist Democrat. She's certainly not some of the far left that we have in like the squad, but she's not a centrist. She's kind of a centrist Democrat, if that makes sense. If you look between the wings of the crazy Democrats and super crazy Democrats, she's kind of in the middle there.
The definition of centrist has kind of
Yeah.
shifted these days.
Exactly.
Anyone who's not completely crazy.
Yeah, she's kind of in the middle there. From Michigan, from the Detroit Ann Arbor area, and Representative Dingell, I think that is just a disgrace. You may be unwilling to recognize these men and women who died because of your president's incompetence. We are not. We want to honor these men and women, so I'm going to read their names and show you their images. You may have seen some of these before, but if we're not going to recognize them in the House, we're going to recognize them here on WJ Live. Starting, and I apologize in advance if I get any of these names wrong, I may. But we're going to start with the Marines, the 11 Marines who fell. Sergeant Johanny Rosario Pichardo, Sergeant Nicole L. G., Staff Sergeant Darren T. Hoover, Corporal Hunter Lopez, Corporal Dagan W. Page, Corporal Humberto A. Sanchez, Lance Corporal David L. Espinoza, Lance Corporal Jared M. Schmitz, Lance Corporal Riley J. McCollum, Lance Corporal Dylan R. Marola, and Lance Corporal Kareem M. Nikui. Those were our 11 Marines. Also fallen was Navy Corpsman Maxton W. Soviak and a Army Special Operator, Staff Sergeant Ryan C. Noss. I didn't realize this until I was reading this piece, and I did a little homework on these folks. Staff Sergeant Noss was a psychological operations specialist. He worked in the not the same unit I was in, but kind of a sister unit to the unit that I was in back when I was in the military, just after the Civil War. These men and women gave everything. Staff Sergeant Noss, I read a little bit about him just because of that connection. 23 years old, married 5 years, and by all accounts, just a brilliant young man. Could have done whatever he wanted to do, but he chose to serve his country. And his wife said if he had known what was going to happen and felt there was one person there he could help, he would have gone anyway. That's the kind of man he was. That's the kind of people all these folks were. These are the kinds of people that Representative Debbie Dingell does not want recognized on the House floor. Shame on you, Representative Dingell. So, guys, why would any member of the House of Representatives do this? I mean, I'm as cynical as the next guy, I guess, and certainly am always looking for the political motive when it comes to public figures, candidates, and politicians. I don't see it here. I don't see how this is anything but an albatross around her neck the next time she goes to the people of Michigan, who are as patriotic as anybody else, and ask them to vote for her.
Mm-hmm.
So what's she thinking? What does she get out of this?
The only thing that I can possibly even think of is, we look at those images. We had the ages up there. They all start with 2s. I mean, these are young men who are just starting their lives. You see these images, and the only thing I can think is maybe she is feeling like you hear their names, you see their ages, you see their pictures, and it kind of makes it more human. Maybe she feels as if she can just keep saying, 13 people died and kind of brush it under the rug, then it's less real. It's less of an issue that Americans can really relate to. It's more just these people that died far away. Once you start giving them names, showing their ages, telling about them, their families, it's much harder to ignore and brush under the rug.
That may be true. Sadly, by my thinking, that's maybe the less cynical option. The first thing that came to my mind is simply that it was a knee-jerk reaction on her part, that she didn't even think it through. She just saw it come to the floor, realized the optics could be bad, wham, gavelled it down.
Political decision,
rather
than a.
If it were right, and if it were calculated, like you were suggesting, Grant, that's almost better, because at least she would have considered the possibilities. But if she saw,
it's instinctual, that is.
If she saw 13 young men and women who died for their country, and the immediate thought was, well, we can't have this acknowledged, that's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. But it's disturbing one way or the other, because there are no good answers for the question you asked. There's no good reason why. I mean,
well, because it was the wrong thing to do.
Temporary insanity or something like that. That would be the best she could get away with. Or I misheard the that'll be interesting if there will be a statement issued later. Well, I misheard. I didn't realize that's what they were trying to do.
According to reports at the time, the representatives, the Republicans who were trying to get these men and women recognized, were yelling on the floor, like, how can you not read the names? That's not a direct quote.
Maybe she got spooked.
That idea. Maybe she did. I don't know. I do think that she is like every other Democrat out there, trying to figure out, how the heck do I distance myself from this? Or maybe, how do we change the conversation? What else can we be talking about? We have seen Biden over and over again talk about how the American people support getting out of Afghanistan, rather than, as we said earlier in the program, rather than the actual complaint that the American people have, which is how they're getting out, how we're getting out of Afghanistan. Maybe this is another part of that. And along those lines, I think other federal agencies are going to be trying to help Biden out of this hole, Grant.
Yes, that already started yesterday, actually. We had CDC Director Rochelle Walensky, who we've all come to know, I'm
She's my
sure.
favorite.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
my
the
total
best. Her
favorite.
her advice is always great. She has some more great advice for us.
Rochelle.
Rochelle
So
has
awesome.
some more great advice for us that she shared yesterday during a White House briefing, which, as you said, it feels just so disingenuous. I mean, I understand we can't just sit there and talk about Afghanistan forever. We're gonna have to move on eventually, but like to hold a White House press briefing about COVID during this time, this political climate, the
They've
things.
probably been doing them every day. Just nobody's paying attention to them.
I think it's inappropriate, but she held one anyway, and she gave some suggestions. They're not requirements, but you know how the CDC likes to say these are guidances that you should follow if you're a decent person. It's very much kind of like an implied, if you don't follow them, you're terrible. So she issued some new guidances specifically for Labor Day weekend, which many Americans obviously celebrate, kind of the unofficial end of summer, a great time to travel, get together with family, whatever it may be, spend some time outside before the weather starts to get colder.
Celebrate our communist roots.
Exactly. It's great. It's great.
It's a great day. Great day for that.
So she issued some guidance for what we should be doing, particularly in regards to protecting from COVID-19 during Labor Day. And she said, quote, "First and foremost, if you are unvaccinated, we would recommend not traveling." She said, quote, "People who are fully vaccinated and who are wearing masks can travel, although given where we are with disease transmission right now, we would say that people need to take their own risks into consideration as they think about traveling." So if you're unvaccinated, you can't travel at all. If you're vaccinated, you can,
But you
but
might die.
also you might still die, and you also might still be a terrible person.
The same thing. It's the same
It's
thing
never
they've been
changed.
telling us for
Never
18
changed.
months.
And that's actually interesting that you say that, because I have one more quote that I was going to read from her, and it's probably the most jarring of the things she said, or at least the most untrue. And she said, quote, "As I've said before, masks are not forever, but they are for now. Given the high transmissibility of the Delta variant and the significant community transmission in this country, wearing a mask is the easiest way for anyone, regardless of your vaccination status, to slow the spread of the disease." So my question for you guys, really for Rochelle, but I'm going to pose it to you, is if we're vaccinated and we still need to wear masks and we're moving the goalposts, how is this not forever? What's the end going to be here that we're going to say, okay, we're not going to wear masks anymore?
No one will address that question. No one will set that goalpost.
Right.
Now, in Rochelle's defense, I know she's been on a long journey from Milan to Minsk, but and so she's been busy. She's been busy.
Sure.
That's a Seinfeld reference. But yeah, I mean, why let a crisis go to waste? There are resources pouring. Every federal fiefdom that has anything to do conceivably with COVID has gotten all sorts of money. Why in the world would you let that disaster go to waste? Why would Tony Fauci has every interest in continuing this?
Mm-hmm.
That is
That's-
the hallmark of liberalism. That as soon as you put somebody in charge of poverty in this country, they have a self-interest in making sure there are as many poor people in the country as there possibly can be, because that increases their power. So they immediately want to raise the poverty line, right? So that more people are subject to their domain or part of their domain. It's also a hallmark of progressivism that they can't tell you what the end goal is. Where are progressives trying to bring this country? They cannot answer that question because wherever we go, they want to go further. And it never ends. So I don't see why there would ever be an end to this. It's against their nature.
They also have a feeling of moral superiority on their side. So yes, perhaps I'm inconveniencing people, but I'm doing it for their own good. As Lewis said, people who torment you with the approval of their conscience will do it forever. And that's what every month that passes with this still going on is another chapter in Fauci's book. And there are lots of people who want to write books or keep their departments fully funded, add staff, all of those things. So and this is another thing that happens when you have bureaucrats in power instead of people who've actually been small L liberally educated. um, you get people with these incredibly myopic, tiny points of view. And so, doctors
Yeah.
tend to think, oh, the thing I have to do is save that life, no matter what.
Right.
No matter what.
And if that's your doctor, that's exactly what you want him thinking.
I'll tell you, until I'm about 89
Yeah,
or
right.
so, but there are a lot of them who will. I mean, they will destroy your life to keep you alive.
Yeah.
And that is some of what's happening here. And unfortunately, we don't have a political class that's well enough educated to weigh out the pluses and minuses for all of this and come to an informed decision. Instead, they have outsourced it all to the expert class, and the expert class is collectively useless.
Yeah, I think as we talk about just trying to use this crisis to get everything they can out of it, it almost relates to what we were talking about that could happen to Joe Biden if we continue to hold his feet to the fire. People get fed up; they've had enough. I think people are really close, if not already there, on COVID. I think that this kind of messaging is not getting to people the way that it was obviously a year ago. We have a couple of tweets that we can pull up here that are in response to this new kind of guidance that they issued yesterday. A couple of Twitter users. One said, "I was planning on staying home, but now I'm suddenly feeling an overwhelming desire to travel." One said, "Joe Biden orders the unvaxxed not to travel over the Labor Day weekend. The unvaxxed don't care what Biden says, or they would have gotten the vaccine to meet his July deadline."
That's a good point.
So, I mean, both those things kind of show you that it's almost like the CDC's guidance is kind of flying right in their face. So people are saying, I want to do exactly the opposite of what you're telling me to do. Do you think that the CDC is actually naive enough to believe that people still want to listen to them? I'm sure there are some people out there that do, but they've got to realize, right, that they're losing some of their pull.
Yeah, Mitt Romney famously said that 47%, I think, of the American people would never vote for a Republican candidate because they were all on the dole, basically. It's a similar dynamic to that. There's a certain percentage that is so invested in the Democrat Party and liberalism and progressivism that are they're going to do whatever they're told. They're just going to be good sheep, and so you never quite are going to get all people to resist. And you asked earlier, Grant, how long does this go on? And it goes on for as long as we let it go on. That's the real answer to that question. It goes on for as long as the American people sit back and let this happen. It's not really happening in Arizona right now because our governor has some sense, and it's not really happening in Florida right now. And while we do see, the Delta variant is apparently quite contagious. We do see contagion rising. We don't see death rates rising. We are seeing people with natural immunity or people who are vaccinated and seem to be, they may contract it, but they don't get a severe a case. That seems to be a occurrence as well. And that process is actually slowed in areas where some of these guidelines are actually followed better. So, look, I'm not advising anybody to go out and dance in the streets naked so you can get COVID and help get us to herd immunity faster or whatever the theory is. That's not my point at all. But we're what, 18 months, 20 months into this at this point. Just as we think science is starting to kind of come to some sort of consensus about some things, which is not how science works, but you know what I mean. Something changed. We have a variant. We got a new study. Whatever. This is still really up in the air, and so every time the CDC comes out and says something with certainty, they actually lose credibility in their attempt to gain it, and that's what's happening. That's the dynamic that's been happening over and over again.
I do kind of think they think everybody listens to them.
I
Except
really
for the
can't,
crazies.
I really can't tell if they actually feel that way.
No, I really do. I mean, just think of the number of times you've dealt with bureaucrats in your life and the lack of breadth for their vision
Mhm.
that their vision exhibits. I don't think they think. I don't think they think like regular people think. I I think their little bureaucratic fiefdom is their world, and they really do think, well, man, we're in charge of topic X, and yes, everybody should listen to us. We're the government.
Yeah.
Uh, I think they're probably deluded enough to think that.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate because there are things that that are still here or that could come up in the future that present actual grave health risks. Like you said, the Delta variant
Exactly.
is contagious. We're not dying, but it's contagious. There are other things will happen in the future that present grave health risks, and it's to the point now, at least personally for me, where if I hear something from the CDC about some disease that comes out 3 years from now, I'm not gonna believe what they say. So
Why should we?
right.
Yeah. Why should we? Yeah. So look, the Biden administration wants you to wear masks. They want you to get vaccinated. They want you to do, just be a good follower and do what they tell you to do. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you not to get vaccinated or not wear a mask. You should make those decisions on your own. That's what Americans do. The Biden administration also wants you to forget about Afghanistan. I am going to tell you, don't do that. Don't forget about the Afghanistan debacle. But they're going to work overtime to come up with other stories. They're going to twist the narrative. They're going to do whatever they can to get you thinking about something else, because there's no way they win on that issue. It's a danger for them in 2022. It's disaster for them in 2024. And that means the establishment and the political class in this country are going to be doing everything they can to change the subject, to twist the narrative. That includes mainstream media. It includes big tech tyrants in Silicon Valley. And that's why it's more important than ever that the Western Journal's voice not be censored, not be silenced, but be shared loudly and as far and as wide as we can make it happen. You can help do just that by becoming a member of the Western Journal at westernjournal.com/join. We'll give you 2 months free when you pay for 10, so you're getting a year's membership there for a price of 10 months. You'll get exclusive content, not available anywhere else. We don't do a lot of that, but there is a little bit there, sort of a thank you to people who invest with us that way. More importantly, you will know that you're making a difference in this battle against fake news and agenda-driven establishment media. Look, when you become a member, and I ask that you would become a member today. It's not a lot of money. Please go do it. Your dollars not only support us financially and make us less dependent on the whims of social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, and I don't have to tell you what's going on with conservatives and Christians over there. Your support also just means the world to us. It's a number we look at and we go, we're not really giving that guy all that much for their money. That's the truth. I'm not going to sit here and tell you anything else. You get little free content. You get a very ad-free experience on the page. It's a nice reading experience. That's about what we're going to give. Oh, we give you a mug. You do get a cool mug. But that's what you're getting. And so we know when you support us with your dollars, it's not for those things. It's because you support what we're doing at the Western Journal. That means more to us than the dollars do. The dollars represent some freedom for us from other social media platforms. That's great. That lets us do what you want us to do, which is tell you the truth. And we want to do that every day. We're going to do that every day, and we hope that you will join in supporting us at westernjournal.com/join. With that, we will bid you farewell until next time. We will be back here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. We'll see you again next time on WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. I'm George Upper, Editor-in-Chief, with Josh Manning and Grant Atkinson saying stay safe till next time. Thank you.